Joining us now, political reporter for Real Clear Politics, Rebecca Berg. Good to have you with us, Rebecca. Reporter at the Washington Free Beacon, Lachlan. Markay, good to have you with us. Rebecca, let's start with you. This thing, I have to say, I have to say this. I have no dog in this hunt, but Bobby Jindal, referring to Trump's hair, even if hardly original, he's showing some moxie. What do you think?
He's showing some moxie, Lou, and he's giving Donald Trump a taste of his own medicine, using these personal attacks that aren't really based in policy. But we've seen with these other candidates in the Republican field how ineffective attacking Donald Trump can be. Just look at Rick Perry, who today we find out is dropping out of the race, the first Republican candidate to drop out of the race for president.
I think we should point out something else, Rebecca. I think we should point out something else. Rick Perry was, if not the first, he was very early in insulting Donald Trump, much to his regret, I'm sure.
Exactly my point. And actually his campaign has said, and he has told me that he didn't regret it, that it was the right thing to do, and it was really the only chance that they had to get any media attention in the Donald Trump presidential election, where he's taking up all the oxygen, and that's really what they needed, and obviously they failed. You know,
Lachlan, one of the things I'm getting a little tired of is people talking about these poor candidates who just simply can't overcome Trump's ability to dominate them. You know, if you can't handle that, get out.
Well, and we saw the first candidate to go very aggressively after Trump, Rick Perry, just dropped out of the race. So if you want a case study in how that works out for some of these Republican candidates, I think that's a cautionary tale. Yeah,
cautionary, but at the same time, I'm not kidding. I think that Governor Jindal did exactly the right thing. He's going after him. And I don't see any other way to play but straight up and play hard, because, by the way, the American people are saying they don't want a bunch of milquetoast, orthodox, pablum drinking and spewing candidates soaking up all of the airtime.
Well, I don't think, you know, I think there's middle ground there. For instance,
I don't think there is.
Ben Carson today was asked directly, would you like to respond to something that Trump said about you? And he said, well, not particularly, and then went on to detail his plans for the nation. And I think that's the right approach.
Well, it's certainly one, and I think it's precisely right for Dr. Carson, without question. But these other candidates, Rebecca, who is going to break out? Who's going to break out here?
Well, here's the problem for the other candidates, Lou. I mean, no matter how much they decide to take on Donald Trump, no matter how brash they try to be, and that could end up looking inauthentic if they do try to be brash just to compete with Donald Trump, the problem for most of these candidates is that they aren't outsiders, and that's what Republican voters appear to be craving right now. It's why we see in Iowa Ben Carson and Donald Trump combined taking up more than half of the vote among Republicans right now. And so if you're Scott Walker or Jeb Bush or any of these other candidates who are elected officials or former elected officials, there's just nothing you can do to erase that from your resume.
And Ted Cruz, who was earlier being dismissed by many savants in the media, particularly, and some of his rivals now, is being too harsh and being too pointed in his attacks on policy issues. He's starting to look very smart here. He's moved to number 4 in the polls. Again, an insider, not an outsider, and I think showing that he's got real potential here, an upside. Certainly moving to 4th place is not an inconsiderable achievement, do you think?
I mean, amazingly enough, he has become almost the establishment alternative among the more conservative candidates in the race when stacked up next to Trump. And folks
the establishment right now, Lachlan, is cussing you, because the last thing they want to do is think of Senator Cruz as one of theirs.
Well, I'm sure they would never admit it publicly. But that's the amazing thing about Donald Trump, is he makes Cruz look like an establishmentarian by comparison, and certainly his post in Washington doesn't help with that.
Very quickly, let's take a look at this from the Vice President on, as my buddy Bill O'Reilly says, on Colbert last night.
I don't think any man or woman should run for president unless they know exactly why they would want to be president. They can look at the folks out there and say, I promise you, you have my whole heart, my whole soul, my energy, and my passion to do this. I'd be lying if I said that I knew I was there.
Rebecca, is that persuasive amongst voters, do you think, in saying, hey, I can't wait for Joe to get there?
I think it was just a very candid moment from him, frankly. It doesn't seem to me that it was calculated to necessarily draw voters in or get them excited for his bid. I think right there he was just being very open and emotional about his state right now and his state of thinking. And that interview, to me, was not a convincing argument that he is looking to run for president right now. It looks like he does have some deep reservations about that.
You agree, Lachlan?
Yeah, I think it showcased why he would be a formidable candidate. He's honest, he's candid, he's very likable, and he's very relatable. So, he's got that going for him, but whether he's in a place personally to do it, obviously that's his decision.
And that doesn't even take into account Bernie Sanders, the socialist, nor Hillary Clinton, who's in significant trouble. But we'll save that for another time. Thank you both for being here, Lachlan. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Be sure to vote on our